Welcome to Real Talk and ELT, a podcast that talks about the reality of teaching English.
Sounds good. Okay.
We'll try and stay focused, but who knows?
Let's do our best. Yes, okay.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. I'm here with Miss Hellen Haga.
Hello.
Okay, so let me introduce you because we did. Oh my God, when did we do that live?
Last year.
I
suppose? Yes.
It didn't work out at all to do the live, but then we recorded it.
Yes.
But you haven't been on the podcast because you were busy doing your module 2, right? Or module 3?
Module 3.
Module 3. You're on module 2 now.
Yes.
Okay, let me introduce her. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. A former degreed librarian, Hellen Haga has been teaching English since 2011. Nowadays, she's a business English mentor and founder of Higher Up Business English. We'll put all the contacts in the show notes.
Sure.
She has been a speaker at international events such as the 12th ELF, stop it, the 12th ELF conference in Colombia in 2019. That's a great coincidence. 12
yes.
ELF. And the British Council Mexico 30th BBELT in 2021. She has also given talks at national events organized by Brest Teasel, Brelt, Troika, etc. about ELF, native speakerism. You're just the ELF BELF native speakerism go-to lady. You are a former member of ELF Practices for Inclusive Multilingual Classrooms in Rich from the Hellenic Open University of Greece in 2020. You are one of the founders of Conversations about BELF, English as a Business Lingua Franca, with our friend Evan, who's been on the podcast before. It's Evan, it's Katrine, Lucas joined. Who else is on that?
Yes, Virginia.
And Virginia.
Yes,
Great
Virginia.
team. Yes.
Yeah, Virginia has been she's a former president of APIBA.
Nice.
In Argentina.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So, if you haven't joined the conversations about BELF, because they happen, it's like monthly, right?
Monthly,
okay,
yes.
Yeah, monthly. There's these conversations. Usually, you guys get great speakers, and then they have a chat, or they give kind of almost like a webinar, and then there's breakout room discussions afterwards, so you get to talk to people. I talked to Katrine, who's over in Germany this past time, and Li Ling, who was in Malaysia, which was awesome because it was just like we're all over the world. It's really good.
Indeed, yes, exactly. In fact, Lillian and I we're organizing an event with our students.
Nice.
Yes, exactly, because that is the BELF.
It's great. Yeah, she's super fun. I liked her. She was a cool person to talk to. I was like, oh my God, Malaysia. Okay, tell me everything.
Yes, exactly. Because how many Malaysians do you know?
Exactly. And she's working as a professor at one of the universities now, and they're like developing the modules for the students in the university. So really cool person. Yeah.
Yep.
Back to Hellen. She holds.
So you should attend Conversations about BELF because you have the chance, to meet these great people from all over the world.
Exactly. I mean, where else can you? Networking is key, people. We need to start really doing that. There is a big social aspect to, teaching, where if you start meeting people, you start getting exposed to other things. You're like, oh my God, there's so much going on that I just don't know about because it's not really in my context, or, somebody's not working with it. So anyways.
Yes, exactly. Not only business English practitioners actually can benefit from the conversations.
Yeah, because Lucas's talk. Oh, hang on. Let me finish your bio. It's
the
last line.
Sorry.
Do you see how we deviate? Rabbit hole. We're just down the rabbit hole again. Hellen holds a CPE, CELTA, and Delta modules 1 and 3. She's almost done with her module 2. So done bio. Okay.
Yay, fantastic. Yeah, exactly.
But because Lucas's talk, he was talking about, I forget the name of it. It was intercultural
lingua
cultural competencies. I forget how he phrased the name of the talk.
It was a tricky thing. Don't ask me. Yes.
But it was absolutely applicable to everyone that teaches English.
Exactly.
He did it in a business context because of where he is, but the whole framework and everything that he put together was absolutely not specific only to business. Like, you could see the applications elsewhere as well. So
Yes, exactly. And especially the fact that he focused on textbooks. So he was using market leader,
Market leader, yeah.
market. I always forget the name of that. I absolutely dislike that material, but I know it has been really famous, and lots of people use it in Brazil as well. But anywho, his focus was applicable to every single context. And nowadays, we can't just, well, you had Priscilla in your
Yeah,
podcast.
Priscilla was here. We were talking about
Yeah,
ELF. Yep.
talking about health, exactly. So I think we should be past this discussion. Health is a thing, and your students are speaking in health context, whether you want it, whether they want it or not. And I don't mean you, Kelly, I mean everybody.
Generalizing.
So yes, exactly. So I think we should be way past this discussion. It's so bizarre to me realizing that there's still schools and teachers who are still lost in that dichotomy of British and American English and perpetuating those misguided ideas. So that's why I think the conversations are useful, even if you don't teach business English.
Yeah, I think there was actually the with Lucas's talk, there was a translator, if I'm not mistaken. I think someone put down that they were a translator, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know if it might have. I might be remembering wrong.
I can't recall that. Sorry.
But anyways, regardless, yeah, definitely something that everybody can benefit from, even though we're talking about specifically business because it's, BELF, but you could very easily extrapolate it into other areas. So
yes, exactly. Speaking of which, just to clarify, BELF, yeah, because maybe people don't know the difference if. Yeah, all of these acronyms, what are they? So first thing is that BELF, it's not business English as a lingua franca, as I once thought. I don't know why exactly, but
because the way that it is, and I think sometimes even I say it like business English because of like BELF, like in my brain. So
exactly,
we don't mean to say it like that.
No, absolutely. You said it correctly. Actually, I'm just saying that there is a reason for the acronym. When they coined the term, I suppose it's because of the thought that you're talking about using English as a business lingua franca. It's not business English as a lingua franca. You see, there is a slight difference. It's a nuance, but this exists. So the thing about BELF and why is it different from ELF? I think it's important to illustrate that. First and fundamental thing, it's about business. Yes, exactly.
It has a B.
Exactly. Yeah, but people constantly overlook that. So I think I should bring that.
Yes,
and Evan also made a joke about so all of us are going to talk about BELF with Kelly. I hope we don't contradict ourselves.
Well, also because on the Conversations about BELF website, there is and I usually refer people to it too, because you guys do have a really cool graphic where it's like a mind map almost looking.
Yeah,
and you can see how, depending on someone's perspective, their teaching beliefs, their background, etc., you can see how there could be a tendency for people to emphasize one branch more than the other, even though they fall under the definition of BELF.
BELF.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because I mean, linguists don't agree. Second language acquisition, right? So we have all of these theories about it, and depending on which kind of, I'm going to butcher this, but which kind of sector you land in, you could be more on the cognitive side. You could be more on the. Do you see what I'm saying? Like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the interpretation of the BELF definition, I think it's not that everyone's going to contradict themselves. I think it's that it depends on what emphasis you put on the many facets that kind of fall under the definition, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also another thing which we constantly discuss in the group, if we should call it wealth, so it's working, English as a working lingua franca or as a work lingua franca, because when you think about business English, normally you think about an office, white collar jobs and these sort of things. And it's much more than that. It includes, for instance, I've worked on a cruise ship. So that is also BELF. Why not? You have Filipinos and Brazilians and Indians and Chinese all working together. You can't get more BELF than that. You know what I mean?
But
so,
because it's like the entertainment sector, it's not automatically put under the business. We always think, and this is what people always think of. They think business, they think C-suite executives. That's what they think of.
Exactly.
Because that's what, if you say business, it's automatically the person in the suit going to the board meeting.
Yes, precisely. Yeah. So this, but that's the thing. Now I have seen, for instance, an article about MELF, which is English as a medical lingua franca. So
we have had. There's going to be like LELF, English as a legal lingua.
Yeah, whatever. Yes, exactly.
Oh, we're just going to go through all the ESP.
Exactly. And that doesn't make much sense, we just call everything BELF and that's it.
Right.
But this is the part of applied linguistics that I don't really like, because it's too much of a theory. And when it comes to the classroom, when it comes to people doing business, but the thing is, despite the definitions, which can vary, and you can find lots of them on Conversations About BELF website, there are two things I think are fundamental. And Luihiala Salminen and Kankaranta always talk about those things. They are very big names in BELF research, and they always talk about getting the job done and building rapport as being the fundamentals of BELF. So this is what should guide us when we talk about BELF perspective in the classroom. Okay,
that's kind of perfect because, of course, the construction has started on my street.
I can't hear it.
It's fine. No, it always comes in during the podcast. It's like my co-host, the construction or the dogs on the street.
I see. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. No, but that leads us into those two aspects of what is the priority, right? Mm-hmm. That leads us into what we kind of thought about talking about today, which was, so getting the job done. Sorry, say it again. Getting the job done and how else?
And building rapport.
And building rapport. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we focus on just those two aspects, which these researchers obviously, they talk about this constantly. We've got a couple case studies to share.
Yes.
And look at these things from a teacher's perspective. Here's what happened with some of our students. So we're going to give a couple case studies. Get ready, people. And then kind of talk about why we should be focusing less maybe on terminology and grammar and things like that. Not that those things aren't important, but some key factors that we also have to take into consideration, not just grabbing the business English book off the shelf and saying, let's go.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Very good.
Okay, so do you want to start with yours? Do you have a case study example, or do you want me to go?
Okay, absolutely. Right. So I was talking to Kelly before when we were planning this, and what happened was I had this student. She's a C1, so not a beginner, and she went to Europe for a conference where she was supposed to give a presentation, and she's a director, so at a multinational. And suddenly, during the meeting, she was attending, her boss started questioning her in a way that we Brazilians are simply not used to, because we deeply the concept of face value, it's very strong in Brazil. So you wouldn't do something to make people feel uncomfortable in front of others, because that's just cultural. So she wasn't used to it. And after that meeting was over, she called the HR manager and said, I want to quit.
It's pretty
So,
drastic.
yes,
One
precisely.
meeting and then that's it.
I mean, she has been working, because thank God she hasn't left, but she has been working for this company for many years. And then after that, she came back to Brazil and we had our usual class, and she explained everything that happened. So I started asking her some questions to determine whether this was actually rude behavior from him, because then of course we take our students hide. Oh, why did he?
Completely inappropriate.
Yes, exactly.
That's it. We're protesting.
Yes, exactly. But I felt like, is that so? Is it exactly what happened, or were you just so into the situation that you couldn't just stop, take a step backwards and think, wait, is that me, or is that just some sort of behavior? So I started asking her questions, and then what we came to the conclusion was that in his culture it was perfectly fine.
Can I ask where was he from?
I can't remember. That's he was European, that's for
Okay.
sure. But I can't remember exactly where. I can't remember if he was English or French. But the fact is, we know that depending on where in Europe you come from, this is just standard.
Right.
It's nothing personal. And unfortunately, we Brazilians take things very personally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This reminds me, I'll add on to this. This reminds me of recently I had a few sessions with one of my clients, and he's, he's the VP of a huge company. I mean, huge company, multinational companies, very high level. And they're in the animal feed industry. And that pretty much their products are kind of revolutionizing the market because it goes from reactive treatment of animals to proactive treatment of diseases and preventative things. So it's kind of like innovative, and there's a lot of companies who are looking to invest and actually buy out the company. Now they've predominantly they're all over the world. Predominantly they've been in Latin America, and they've moved up the Americas and but now and in Europe, but now they're moving global. I mean, really global. So he had to have an investors meeting. And as the VP, he had to sit there and describe, here's the product lines that we offer, here's the certifications that we have, here's all of this information. Why is this important? Why does it give us a competitive edge, et cetera, and kind of just give a debriefing of the company for future investors. But obviously it's a good thing if the company gets bought because it makes money. So, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform in kind of a sales pitch kind of way. But
Sure.
also, yeah. And so we were going through the presentation, and he started talking to me, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him, and I'm like, okay. And now I've been in Brazil for 12 years now, so I'm like, okay, I'm listening to this thing, and I said, you know what? Hang on, who are you talking to?
That's the point.
And he goes, oh, the investors are from the Netherlands, from France. I was like, ooh, okay, we need to restructure all of what you just said. Yes. Everything you just said, we have to go back and change all of that. And he's like, why? Is something wrong? I said, it's not wrong. It's the way that you're delivering it. The expectation from people in those countries is not that you're going to be giving this really adorable, long explanation with a very complete story and lots of details like South Americans like to do. They want very direct information that encompasses everything. It's complete, maybe has less details, but
Mhm.
also that they're going to be able to investigate the points that are very important for them, but they don't want to really
Mhm.
be wasting time with like
Yes.
complete stories. He's like, really? I was like, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's renegotiate this. And it was all because of who's your audience,
Precisely. Yes.
right? And so I
It's
think it's exactly what your student went through. Like, who's your audience here?
who's your audience. Yeah, but actually I failed to prepare her for that because I didn't know she was going to do that. So she just told me I'm going to an event and that's it. So it didn't even occur to me that she would be presenting something, because she's so used to doing it all the time. She doesn't need me to prepare her anymore for these things, which is great, fantastic. But then when she came back, it was such a surprise to me because I thought, you know, um, nothing personal. It's just the way it is. They are used to questioning, and he must understand where you're coming from. So, thank God she came to terms with
she
everything.
she was okay
Yeah,
with it. She calmed
yeah.
down.
Okay,
Yeah.
she just calmed down and thought, yeah, I'm not going to give up my job just because of that. But this is also something we Brazilians do. We act impulsively, just that manager doesn't like me and whatever, and so
Right.
I think being aware of our own behavior is
Yes.
fundamental when we're dealing with people from different cultures. And
Mm.
when we talk about BELF, there is something really nice. Those two authors I mentioned, they talk about global communicative competence. And one big aspect of it is multicultural competence.
Yes.
So as we were talking about, is much more than just talking about grammar,
And
talking about the
terminology,
language.
and we're
Yes.
not trying to, and I would say, that we're not trying to discount those things, of course,
No, absolutely.
in terms of
Mhm,
like, we need to build proficiency, we need to do that,
mhm,
so it's kind of, but we have to balance that with, okay, so what scenarios are you going to be getting yourself into? And it could be incremental, where you have students that are going to be working, and that's typical here in Brazil,
mhm,
right? So we have
mhm,
students that, as they start to use English more and more in the workplace, usually they're
mhm,
interacting with the people who are closest to them within the
mhm,
country or within
mhm.
South America. And the South American countries, the cultures here are actually quite similar. I've dealt with, like, some people have a lot of business dealings with Colombians. Colombians have a very, very similar
Oh, there's
way of kind of doing business as Brazilians. So it's it's
mhm.
it's easy to kind of adapt to that type of environment.
Yeah.
But as soon
But
as you start expanding and going out, it's like, okay, so what changes here? What's different? Because you're not going to treat, business dealings in Colombia and Argentina the same way.
that's exactly it. Do you know Erin Meyer, the author of The Culture Map?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Erin Meyer, Meyer, I don't know how to say her.
We apologize in advance.
Yes, and that's no offense, please, because I really really enjoy her work. I really look up to her because she's amazing. And I haven't watched one of her videos where she says um, misunderstandings usually occur in similar cultures. Yeah, so when you get an Argentinian and a Brazilian, and you think, oh, all Latin America, so
It's
what could go
fine. We
wrong?
can just do portoñol and everything's good, right?
Yes, exactly.
No.
That's precisely the point. And
Right.
and she says that's exactly where misunderstandings happen because if you have to do business with a Chinese, the culture is so dramatically different from yours. You everything you're going to be stepping on eggshells because I don't know what would they think about this or that, but hermanos, Argentinian, they're all very close, and then a faux pas.
Yeah, I mean, it does technically happen, and it's when we get comfortable too. I think that there's also another thing that specifically business English teachers, this does translate to other contexts too, but we're the
Mhm.
business English ladies, so
Yes.
um is that cultures within companies are very much determined by their headquarters as well. And so company policy, though there might be companies or institutions that work in internationally, you know, in, for example, in South America, but the way that their company culture is dictated, the way that they have to handle things, the way that they approach problems and negotiations and you know, presentations and all of that stuff is dictated by, you know, the headquarters. And then where is that headquarters located? Who's really in charge of that, right? And so one example of that is I had a student, I'm in Americana. I had a student who was working in Piracicaba, right? In São Paulo. So right down the road, you know, and they were working for, it was a new job, and they were working for a Korean company. And they thought, it's fine. It's in Piracicaba. It's right nearby. It's great. It's a big, huge company. It's going to be no problem. As soon as they got there, they were absolutely miserable because the workers from coordinator level down were all Brazilians. And so they all had the same style. Some of the administration, in terms of human resources, in terms of the medical doctors that work there, they were also Brazilian. And so they had the same kind of vibe, we'll say. Then manager level, director level, and above were all South Koreans. And they mandated within the company that they maintain the same company culture and customs that would be in South Korea. And so it translated into huge culture shock to the point where you would have to walk into the manager's, director's office holding a piece of paper so that it was facing them with two hands and giving it to them with two hands. So you can imagine the assumption of people who are suppliers or vendors to this company walking in and having a meeting with, oh, they're just, you know, they're here in Piracicaba. They're the director of a business unit. So it's fine. We can just have, no.
Not at all. Yes.
Not going to happen.
Exactly.
So...
yes, exactly. So all of these things we're talking about, they are about making our students aware of their multicultural competence, and where it's not only English, it's much more than that. Is where their own cultural biases conflict with other cultures. You see, so this is why in a business English setting we have to take all of this into consideration, and it is a bit frustrating. I have talked to novice teachers who are getting into business English, novice teachers in the sense of BE, not in the sense of teaching, and they're so shocked. I had no idea I had to deal with all of these things. I thought it was just getting a market leader and going through the units.
Yeah, I just want to learn, you know, maybe I'll take a business course and learn about some terminology and try to understand how, you know, the basic structure of businesses and hierarchies and things like that. It's like, that's good. It's going to help you. But at the same time, you also have to use your background as a teacher to do it's, I feel what happens is with, with experience, people, business English teachers who have a lot of experience, like we've been doing it for a little bit and we just get, it's like we're doing a constant needs analysis. We're like the needs analysis pros. Like we know, like I think anybody in ESP really, but just like needs analysis all day, 24/7 is just like, okay, what's going on here? And you're just constantly thinking of all the different aspects, not only the language. Of course, we're trying to provide language as well, but the language needs to be appropriate for the scenario.
Yes.
It needs to be well received because like the two authors, I can't even say their last names to be honest. What are their last names?
Luhiola Salminen and Ken Caranta.
Thank you. They're fantastic. Like they said, it's about a lot of times it's about building rapport. If you can't establish relationships in business, you're not going to be able to get the job done.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. But you mentioned something very important when we talk about language.
Mm.
So how can you build rapport if you don't speak the language? A lot of BELF research is based on Asia and Europe, where the proficiency levels of English are quite different from ours. So this is something to take into consideration.
That was a very good politically stated message. Politically correct Helen comes in.
No. What I mean about that? When they're talking about getting the job done, building rapport, that sounds wonderful. They're talking about Finnish people and Norwegian people who leave high school at C1 levels of English. But here you have the A0 people who are required to speak English at work. So we also have to teach them the language, because after all, this is our job.
We are teaching them appropriacy, and we have to teach them what's
register.
Going to work. Yes, genres, looking into the discourse of text and things like that. Obviously, we don't want to get them too academic. We're not training them to be teachers. We need to know how to do this so that we can approach these subjects and we can give a lesson that raises their awareness of key features that they need to pay attention to.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but that doesn't mean ignoring lower levels.
No.
So it's just that it's much more. It's much harder talking about multicultural competence with lower levels, because you're still teaching them how to use present continuous versus present simple. So that's a whole new story. But back to our case study.
Rabbit holes. Just rabbit holes all day long. Here we go. We're just coming back. We digress. We apologize. It is what it is with the two of us.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, people. This ship has sailed. We digress. So back to our case study. What I did was approaching this as a conversation with the student, talking about the cultural differences and how they affected the way the meeting happened. And also preparing her for future conversations, not only with this boss, but with other cultures. So I gave her a list of questions saying, look, before you assume people are being rude, how about thinking about some other things, because I don't know about you, but it's very hard to me knowing when people are being rude to me in another language. Even in English. Okay,
that's a really good point. Even like if they're saying something snotty behind your back. That was actually, here we go, digress again. That was actually one of the first things that when I was living in the US with my husband, one of the first things that he taught me was how to cuss. And how to say swear words and how to xingar, just like in general, just how to destroy a person. And I couldn't say any of these things, but I could recognize them because we lived in an area that there was a huge Brazilian population. And I'm talking all of the businesses were Brazilian owned and operated. And probably 80 to 90% of those employees did not speak English.
Wow.
Yes.
We lived
in like Little Brazil. There was there's a neighborhood, and it's just, I mean, that it is what it is. Well, Boston has a consulate, so, there's a high concentration because they can stay near the consulate. It's easy for them to get documentation, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I digress. So I would go into, this is a fun fact about my family, is that my mom loves the chicken sausage, Brazilian chicken sausage. Do you know the really thin, like the linguiça de frango fina? Do you know the one that you put on the barbecue? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a vegetarian.
Okay, you're a vegetarian. Okay, the other people know. So if you go into the açougue and you see all the different linguiças, there's like linguiça toscana, there's all the different sausages, right? Okay. And my mom likes for some reason, she's like, can you get the chicken sausage for me? I'm like, yeah, I'll get the chicken sausage for you. Like every time we had a barbecue. So I would go in, I would get the chicken sausage for my mom. I would get the boxes of garoto chocolate for my husband.
Okay.
And I would get like paçoca for me. Like I would get like the junk food, Brazilian junk food from the
Junk food,
Brazilian market.
okay.
When I walked in, obviously, I mean, just looking at me, I'm not Brazilian. And I would say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
hi, hello. Do you know what I mean? I'd kind of walk in and I get like the panetones at the end of the year. And they didn't realize that I could identify some of those words. And they're like, oh, this gringo. Oh, God, what is she doing here again? Look at that.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
could start recognizing that they weren't being very nice to me. So then I would say some things in Portuguese and then they would stop because they didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, you know, like if my husband hadn't taught me those things or hadn't at least raised my awareness that these people are probably saying bad things about you because you look like an idiot going in there and getting chicken sausage and souffle.
No, why? Why? No.
Like that was
on,
like
no.
you know, I looked like I was like, okay, I need the chicken sausage, and they did it just. The crazy thing is, they did it just like here, there. So they would be like, how much do you want? It was by grams. I didn't know how many grams. Like I was like, I don't know.
You U.S. Americans and your bizarre way of measuring
I was
things.
like, I need ounces,
Come
I
on.
need pounds. So like I couldn't figure it out. It was just I was a mess. I was kind of like a little bit of a disaster. But I realized only because my husband told me they're probably making fun of you.
But that's the thing, you know. It's
Yeah.
very hard. It's very hard. If you get a carioca, for instance, you can tell whether they're offending you, offend your family, or just typically saying something.
Yeah.
So even in Portuguese, whenever I go to Rio, I'm always like, is this person mad at me or mad at something or not mad at all? It's just the way they speak.
Oh, yes.
You
Yeah.
know, so even when people are using swear words openly, it's very hard to tell whether they're being rude.
Especially if you don't come from the culture, if you don't come from that area, if you don't know. I mean, this is something that it's not that we as teachers have to know everything about every culture and you know be this guru or whatever. It's not going to happen. Sorry,
No,
it's not going to
absolutely.
happen. But we have to prepare people to recognize when situations might be going bad.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you know, and especially in business, I do this in two very specific situations, and then I'm going to ask you how you do it. But in business, I always kind of like let them know, you know, I give them those guiding questions too, like how are they responding to you? Is this in person? Do they start fidgeting? Do they start looking at their phone? How's the interaction? What's the feeling? Is it tense? You have to start reading the room and seeing what's going on. Even beyond the language, you know, are they being receptive to you? Are they, you know, interacting with your, okay, so we give them, and they become a little bit more aware, and then they think about the way that they're delivering things. And then I also used to do it with my teenagers that I would do like for FCE, like B2 and C1, because they were going on exchanges. I would teach them all sorts of swears and bad things, and their parents were not super happy with me. But what I would tell the parents,
figure.
yeah, shockingly, they didn't want their kids running around swearing. But what I would tell the parents was, no, this is really important because actually I'm trying to protect your child. Because what I want them to do is to be able to recognize if they're in a bad situation in the school or in the city that they're going to be 2,000 kilometers away from you. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be so far from you. They need to recognize, is this going bad or not? And do I need to kind of like exit stage left, right? And so
Yes,
the same thing applies to business.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. But then it also, there is also, again, I always come back to culture because this is the thing. If you're dealing with Asian people, for instance, it's going to be very hard to tell whether or not they're interested.
Because there are some social clues, right?
Like, there are some social clues, of course. But for example, if you're talking to a Japanese person, they might just nod to whatever you're saying. And that's it. And you have no idea whether this is going well or not, because they might even smile. Japanese people are that polite. So they're smiling at you and they're nodding, and then how did that go?
I
Was
don't
it
know if
okay?
Yeah, I don't know if this is
Mhm.
true. Maybe you've heard this too, that even
Mhm.
in some cultures, I'm thinking Indonesia, and I could be sourcing that
Mhm.
wrong. Indonesia, perhaps Japan, maybe, in South Korea, that there's actually multiple ways of saying yes that actually mean no. In terms of, do you know what I'm saying? They don't even have the word to say no in a
Mhm.
polite way. It's just
Mhm.
yes, but you know that it's kind of like if we were to do it in English, I'll think about it.
Yes.
That's pretty clearly going in a negative direction. That's not going. If somebody says,
Mhm.
I'll think about it, you're like, oh, I'm probably going to lose this client.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And I think that
Exactly.
there's something similar, if I can remember. I think it's in somewhere in Indonesia, possibly, that
Mhm.
they don't even have the words or some structures like that to politely say no.
Mhm.
It's
Uh,
always kind of a yes, and then the person walks away and they're like, "Yeah, I nailed that," and then they receive an email. It's like, "Nope, thank you. That was never
yes,
again."
precise, precise. And even with the nodding thing, because we tended to nod in Brazil.
Mm,
You agree with people and you're nodding.
right,
So we are trained to recognize nodding as a sign of things going well.
right.
But that's the thing. In Japanese culture, that doesn't mean anything. That just means people are listening.
Ooh, yeah,
So they're nodding and smiling because that's what they were trained to do.
right,
But that doesn't mean they agree with you at all.
right.
You might end a meeting thinking, okay, that was quite successful, but no. So this is exactly what I mean. Of course, training them to recognize if things are going badly, it's part of our job, as you said. I'll think about it. That is a clear sign that things aren't going well. But they're depending on the culture they're going to encounter. I try to find as much material as I can about that culture because I don't know if that could go well or not and what signs they use, in a business context. So I think this all, of course, goes a bit beyond our job as business English teachers. I reckon that. Okay, it's just part of me wanting to uh, provide everything I can
Yeah, we're
to
overachievers in the
yeah,
service.
yeah, precisely. That's the thing. I reckon that goes way beyond, okay,
Yeah.
the business English teacher role. Please don't take that as a reference.
Like you
um,
need to start researching every single culture and every
no, for
single
God's
gesture.
sake,
No,
no,
that's not,
no, for
no,
God's sake,
not going to
no.
happen.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think being aware of the kind of signs that are generally recognized as things going badly, it's very useful.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to tell depending on that's the main point. It's very hard to tell.
No, of course. Even in the Indian culture, if you kind of tip your head side to side, that for me, if somebody did that, if I had said something and I'm giving a presentation and I kind of nod my head side to side like the Indians typically do, I would
Yeah.
see that as somebody being like, I don't really agree with what she's saying, or that doesn't seem quite right. Do you know what I mean? But for
Yeah.
them, that's
It's just
just that's like, I'm
yeah.
following, continue
Yes. And
listening.
sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no.
Yep. So then it's like, oh shit, how do I how do I figure this out? I mean,
Exactly.
again, we're not going to be experts in every single area. Of course, you would have to say, maybe you work with clients who typically work with people from this region, and then you can investigate that further. It's not like you
Yes.
have to investigate worldwide, but it is important to try and
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, what's the dynamic here? How does this work? Because it
Mm-hmm.
does influence the rapport that they build, the relationships that they build with their peers or with their
Mm-hmm.
clients or vendor, whomever they have to talk to.
It
So,
affects how they build rapport.
and that's really important. I think that one of the things that is very overlooked is that in business English they think many people have this it's an imaginary they, I don't know who I'm talking about here, but that there's a misconception that it's very transactional. Some things are. Some
Mm-hmm.
things are very transactional, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the time it's
The
about
relation.
relationships and
Mm-hmm.
feeling comfortable, and that whole dynamic plays a
Mm-hmm.
much bigger role in business English than people consider. So,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Being aware of genre is fundamental in that matter.
yeah.
So, what is your case study?
And we digress again. Okay, back
Yeah.
to the case study. So, case
Mhm.
study, the one that, because I've given a couple actually, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
anecdotally adding my life, sprinkling Kelly's life around here. The case study that I had thought of was a student. He worked
Mm-hmm.
for an American company here in
Mm-hmm.
Brazil, in São Paulo, in the region. It's an IT company, huge. And he was up for a leadership position in a project. And what
Mm-hmm.
that entailed was that he needed to participate in a meeting with the coordination, so kind of like the people who are overseeing the implementation of a project. And they were meeting with the different groups and team leaders that would be implementing this. It was kind of like a new, I'm just going to say like a new software type of thing. They were
Mm-hmm.
implementing new software. So they had a team in Brazil, they had a team in the US, they had a team in Europe. So, and what he had to do was he had to say, this is the team. Here are our steps. Here's our action plan. Here's how we're going to do it according to the laws here in Brazil. Every team was kind of a little bit different depending on, I think it was actually it was like digital security or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so he gets into the meeting
Mm-hmm.
and he told, by the way,
Mm.
if anybody's a business English student listening, you can't tell your business English teacher 2 days before you have to go do something. First of all, it takes us a little bit longer to prep you for something. So the more lead time that we have, the better services that we can provide. So, it's fine. He's young. He's in his 20s. I forgive.
Yeah, I don't think.
Oh, by the way, yeah, it's fine.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyways,
Okay.
so 2 days before he tells me, so we go through the presentation. I asked him, I'm like, who are you talking to? Oh, I'm talking to the group in the Americas. And I was like, okay, so just kind of be direct and, get straight to the point. You're talking about IT anyways, so you just kind of give them the stats and run it down, bullet point it. And he was fine. And I said, what's the dynamic like? He's like, no, I just have to tell them what we're doing. I said, okay, great. So
Mm-hmm.
go in, do that. We ran through it a couple times. I mean, I had a day to go through it with him, but
Mm-hmm.
from what he told me, it was, I'm going to run through it and that's it. That's all we're supposed to do. We just have to report. Great.
Mm-hmm.
He lost that project. He was removed from the team as the team leader and he was put in a different department. Why? Because during the presentation, there were questions. And he was not prepared for any of those questions, and he completely froze, and he wasn't able to articulate the justifications of why he was doing the procedure that he decided to do. Subsequently, he then actually moved to a different company
Yes, of course.
because he was almost like blacklisted. Like it would have taken him years to be able to get onto another opportunity like that, and so he went to another company within 6 to 8 months. So
Yeah. That's a very drastic example.
super drastic. I was like
How-
horrified for him.
Yeah,
Oh, Jesus,
yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And you feel kind of guilty as well because, well, he's my student, and yeah, I know. Not your fault, by the way.
Oh, I don't take it personally anymore.
Yeah, okay.
But
Mhm.
I think that this shows that there's such a huge importance on being comfortable, like with different scenarios and being able to kind of overcome and adapt when things change.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird thing, but teachers often say that we become psychologists. We're not psychologists necessarily. We're training them to be okay with the
True. Mhm.
the ambiguity of what might go down in a business
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah,
for example.
absolutely. But what did you do?
He completely destroyed his relationships at that company.
Yeah, and that's the worst because again, build rapport.
Yeah, no, his reputation was gone after that. I mean, because there was so many people that were on the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his manager interrupted him and said, "I'll take over from here." I mean, it was that drastic. And then of course the gossip, the fofoqueira that just
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
around the office. That was
yes.
it. He was done.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't think about, you know, that would I if I had only taught him grammar and terminology and things like that, that wouldn't have helped him,
No.
you know. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
prepare them for these types of situations where it's like you might
But what
have to
did you do
interact.
after that?
So what we did after that, actually, he was a little sad, to say the least.
I think you were you're using euphemism here.
Adorable, yeah. So we made a really extensive action plan for him, and the next 6 to 8 months, while he was trying to get hired by another company and move on, he dedicated himself to, and it was interesting the way that he didn't go into the grammar and he didn't try to improve his proficiency, because actually that wasn't the issue. The issue was performance.
Yeah, confidence.
And so we actually worked on free online courses, and he would go and take something related to his job function on like something like edX or Coursera or something like that, and he would go and do a module, and then he would have to explain it to me. And I can play dumb really well, so I would just have him explain it again and be like, why do we do this and what do we do? And so it was just kind of practicing the performance of justification. And so that's how I dealt with it, because he wasn't able to explain and justify and discuss things and describe things and tell me why, and play devil's advocate on the decision that he's making. So it was really just that. And he
Yeah.
got a new job, and then he finally moved on. But it was less about language and more about performance for him.
Absolutely. Wow. That's going to haunt my dreams now.
Have you ever had something similar to that, where your students
Forgot.
where students
See,
were
well,
unable to perform? We'll say. I mean,
no, that would undermine my own confidence. So that's very brave of you. Like, no, let's keep going. Let's design an action plan, and we're going to work towards it. I would have probably asked him to put himself in situations where he would feel under pressure, because we sometimes we fail to foster this environment of high pressure in the classroom, because we're so worried about crashing's low effective filter. We try to make things as comfortable as possible, because that's the place where they trust us and everything. And then we forget that, okay, but at work it won't happen that way. It will be the opposite. They're going to perform under pressure. So I don't know, I'm just having some thoughts here that I would try to put him into situations like having a group of teachers getting together, and we're going to question him, so like a board or something, just to answer our questions. How do you feel about that?
I mean, yeah, I'm a little brutal, I have to say. I'm kind, but also a little bit brutal. Yeah, I think that is important. There is, I mean, Krashen was spot on when he was talking about lowering effective filter. The neuroscience behind that backs it up. We know
Exactly.
that when people get stressed, that's it. They're not processing anymore. But our friend Andre Hedlund had told me, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but resumindo, it was that they need to feel a little bit of stress because because that kind of like gives you motivation. You can't remove all stress, because then also there's no attention, there's no focus, and then there's no learning. So it's kind of like we have to find the balance of slightly stressed to exhibit or promote some sort of response by them. So yeah, I think that the plan was good. I do pressure my students a little bit. I rarely do I grade my language, my speed. And so I come at them like a machine gun. And so sometimes that can make them nervous. I have one student that always leaves the class and he's like, I'm sweating. I'm like, good. See you later. Have a good day. But it's good because his improvement has been substantial. Time after time, he's making progress, but he's uncomfortable. It's not comfortable for him.
Yes, absolutely. But that's the thing. Some people thrive in that sort of environment, and some people sink.
But at the same time, if we're teaching business English, business will not slow down. Depending on what you're doing. I mean, in some scenarios, there's time where people have access to resources and they're able to do things. And there's other times where you have to just, by the seat of your pants, go fly. Like, you've got to figure it out. And you have no support. You just have to make it work. Yeah. And I think students need to have a balance of that. It can't always be calm, and the students they have to feel some sort of pressure, especially if you're preparing them for business, the real business world.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. So this is why I said perhaps having like a group of teachers questioning him,
If anybody wants to volunteer to be a teacher on my firing squad for my students,
I'm up.
Send me an email.
I'll do it. I'll gladly do it.
But doesn't that make sense?
I can be a bitch if I have to.
But it's funny because we're like giggly and like
no,
bubbly, but then
I can be really scary. So, but this is the thing. As you said, putting them under pressure it's also valuable. You said something. What was it? Something about the pants, and I couldn't understand that well.
But the seat of your pants, just kind of.
I have never heard that. What does it mean?
You have to just like birth by fire. Just kind of doing it with no preparation. Yeah.
That reminds me of a meeting I was attending, and the guy just said, "Yeah, you throw them a curveball," and I just. What is he talking about? Is that
baseball? Yeah, curveball.
Sort of baseball. I don't know. I never, it was new to me, and I just thought, oh, bloody idioms.
So then, but then you were uncomfortable, right? And so you had to try and contextualize. I'm sure. Were you able to figure it out at the time?
No, I had to Google it. Thank God it was an online meeting, and. I had a feeling I had understood it, but I thought, let me check that, just make sure. Okay, great. And then I thought, gee, do people realize when they're just throwing idioms at you that maybe they don't know that at all? So this is something that happens with my more advanced students. They come to me and they say, I want to learn some idioms because I have to speak the business lingo, and okay. How much was there's actually a video I quite like on YouTube about what business people say. Have you watched it?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. It's very funny because they're just saying lots of phrases that you hear constantly, like let's hit the ground running, and this is low hanging fruit. And
yes, okay.
So the video it's 3 minutes of just saying
idioms.
Idioms. Yes, exactly. And I just showed that to my students. Okay, look at that. How much can you actually understand of what's going on there? Some of them, okay, are just so common, so usual. We just use them all the time. Okay, that's fact.
Right.
But I always ask them, okay, how much knowing all of these things can actually enable communication, and how much is just hindering your communication? Because I didn't get it when the guy said curveball.
So then, so this is interesting to have students reflect on. And I do this a lot too. Like, I force them to do this. I say, listen, I appreciate that you want to learn idioms and phrasal verbs and all of those good things. And there are some that are definitely applicable and common, and you'll hear them every day. So yes, we can definitely do those. What actually happens in your interactions? Are people using these? Because if all of a sudden you show up to a business meeting, or you're in, I don't know, a conference or an international fair or something like that, and you just start throwing out all of these idioms, first of all, is it something that's commonly used in your field? And if it's not, why would you want to introduce that? Does it help you in some sort of way? And if you're introducing it, who are you introducing it to? And would they be able to easily understand that? If not, how beneficial is that going to be? Anecdotally, that might be an interesting thing for you to learn, because maybe you, I don't know, off chance you might see it in a movie or something like that. But again, going back to principles of BELF, we're trying to find the path of least resistance to get the job done, and not make anybody feel ostracized in a way by using maybe random linguistic things that we think are kind of cool, so that we can actually build rapport with them. So let's prioritize.
Yes, exactly. Because there's so many things we should be looking at in a class. That's the truth. Yes. So we do assess grammar. Okay. We do talk about it. We do talk about vocab. We do talk about pronunciation. We can't just overlook pronunciation, for God's sake, because we know that this is usually what causes miscommunication. But, I always ask my students, how much do you actually need this? And how much this will enable you to be a better communicator? And we're going to make choices towards that. Because as you said, some for example, in IT, they have very specific words and expressions, and like, what was this thing I heard yesterday? Maintainability. And I thought, is that correct?
I would Google it too.
It seems like something made up,
like, wait, I mean, it sounds okay, but
it sounds okay, but it also sounds like something made up.
Yeah.
So I had to Google it, and actually Cambridge Dictionary doesn't recognize the word. So I told my students, okay, that's great. So does everybody understand it when you use it? And they said, yes, of course, we use it all the time. So it is something they have to know. It is a word they have to know. Fantastic. That's it. I won't correct that, and be happy about that. And I found that in another dictionary. But the point is, what is actually helping them get the job done?
Yes. This happened with me just this week, actually. I was dealing with she's a lawyer, so it was legal English. Legalese is not, I dabble, but it's not, I don't love, I have to say. And she was talking about ombudsman. Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's something we use in Brazil. And we use that in Portuguese.
Interesting. So I looked at that and I was like, that's a job title. Usually we go with risk management. Because that would be the area. Not like ombudsmanship. And I was like, why are you using that? And she goes, that's because what we use. I was like, what you use here for your company? Because you're talking to an external investor. Are they going to be able to understand it? I was like, do they use it? She's like, yeah, they do. I was like, oh, okay, then great.
So it's fine.
Continue on. I was like, because I would substitute that if you were dealing with, then they weren't dealing with the American market. And if you were dealing with investors who aren't super they're an investor, but they don't deal with the practical of compliance issues. So then I would say probably not. Risk management would be more digestible. But we had this conversation. She gave me clear examples that the people there do use it because they are inside of, the daily operations of compliance. I was like, great, go. Move on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that type of thing. You have to problem solve, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we do on a daily basis.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like
we adapt.
Yeah. Problem solving. That's
exactly.
What we
adapt. We adapt every single class. You have a plan in your mind which fits into the bigger plan, and then when you come to class, your student just says, "So I have to reply to this email." And I'm failing to get the right tone because I'm going to address the boss of my boss, and you just like, okay.
And this doesn't mean, like Helen said, people, this doesn't mean that we can completely discount and do other things. We work on skills, we work on strategies, we work on, all of the language systems and things like that. It's not that those are discounted. Those are also embedded in the lessons, but there's an extra component that we have to make sure that people who are working in BELF scenarios also are prioritizing getting business done, building relationships, being an acceptable member in that community, right?
Yeah, because we worry about that. We worry about not just teaching the language, but also all the skills that are necessary to thrive in these scenarios. That's the thing. Okay, so it also comes back to what business English trainer actually means. Because
define.
No, absolutely no. I can't. But while I was writing module 3, I kept constantly thinking about that, pondering, and probably happened to you too. So what is the role of a business English trainer?
Yep. I don't think I could actually, honest to God, I couldn't put my finger on that. Because I think that the role changes so significantly all the time. And it's not that it's, I'm a, what is it? The jack of all trades is a master of none, right? But that phrase does go on. It's the jack of all trades is a master of none. But sometimes, what is it? But sometimes, oh gosh, I'm going to Google it now. Anyways, the thing is sometimes it just, we have to help the students in the way that best fits them. And every business, every hierarchical structure that they fit into, all of that stuff is just, it changes how we have to deal with them. It changes how we develop materials. It changes what things we focus on. And it's not to say that doesn't happen in general English. It does. But there's extra components, because if someone's learning general English, they might be traveling infrequently, and they don't have to deal with these people on a constant basis and build relationships with, the vendor at Disney World, for example.
It's not going to make them lose their jobs.
Yeah. And there's such a high stake for the business English people. Business English students, I mean, you can talk about it, that they have such a high stake in doing well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's their livelihood at the end of the day. And you never want them to lose their job.
Yes. Exactly. No, I'm telling you, that example is going to haunt my dreams. I'm going to tell it to my teachers now. Be very careful.
I'll write, you know what I'll do? I'll write it up as a warning for anyone who's going into business English. This is the worst of the worst scenario of things that can happen.
I think you should give a talk for our BC group, Kelly Pennington and 10 horrible stories.
I have all the horror stories. I could be like, these are the horror stories of teaching business English. Welcome to my TED Talk. And like, that's it. I'll just.
Exactly. And then see if people still want to go, down that road.
It's worst case scenario. But at the end of the day, I think, it's a reflection of like, okay, that happened. Got to figure it out. There's a little bit of, resilience there and persistence. And you have to say, because it happened to my student. It's happened to probably many people. I imagine he's one example of, I mean, how frequently do you think this happens in the marketplace?
Yeah. Yes. No.
Probably.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And also, I think that there might have been some other issues concerning that performance, and it can't have been just one single presentation and then everything gone wrong.
Oh yeah, no. I think it was. He was fine. He was, on the team. He was doing well. He was like a future leader. They were kind of grooming him to go up. And as soon as you say, yeah, I'm good, I'm ready to go, and then you bomb to the point where you can't form any phrases, and the people who are beneath you are trying to help you in speaking English better than you, that's it. You're done.
Wow. Yeah.
It's fast paced. It's IT too. IT is kind of cut.
IT. Geez. I've got lots of students, lots of devs, but they're really complicated because at the same time they pass job interviews making tons of mistakes and things that I wouldn't let pass because I can't understand,
Right.
Because that's always what the sort of things I correct. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. This is wrong, but people can understand, but that doesn't make any sense. Right. You have to rephrase that. But at the same time, they pass this sort of job interviews working for multinational companies and making lots of money.
Don't even get us started. You know what we could do? We're going to do a second. Helen is setting us up for a second episode. We'll talk about the hiring process here in Brazil in terms of what does it look like for people to go through English tests in job interviews.
No, don't get me started.
No, we'll do a whole nother episode. Don't worry, my dear.
My God, no, the tests, all the tests. I have sent emails to companies complaining about their hiring tests, about how inappropriate, how useless, about.
And then they wonder why their future leaders that they're trying to groom bomb their presentations.
Exactly, because that's the point. They're very good at grammar. They can answer a test where they get a third conditional right. But then when it comes to getting the job done, so, okay.
And BELF, we bring it back to getting the job done.
BELF. Yeah, that's the thing. I have the feeling we have been speaking for hours now.
We've been speaking for about an hour. It's fine. We'll end it here because we went back to the topic of getting the job done. So that should really be the highlight of this divergent case study, personal anecdote rant, I guess we could call it.
Sure. Absolutely. Hope this is useful somehow to whoever is listening.
I think it is. It is, people. Learn from our mistakes. And not even our mistakes, but our, situations that we've gotten ourselves into. Try and focus on getting the job done. Try and focus on clarity. Focus on rapport building, multicultural aspects and competencies. Anything else you want to add?
Business know-how. Yeah. So I think
it's beyond language at this point.
That's exactly. That's the bottom line of everything we have been talking about here. It's a bit beyond the language, because if your students aren't into the business and how they talk about the business, then it doesn't matter. And then they can teach you, of course. You can't possibly understand everything about legal, finance, IT, and everything, but you've got to know like Kelly said, jack of all trades, because you have to know a bit of the basis of what your students deal with, because otherwise they're talking about front end versus back end development and you're
lost.
yeah, okay, why does that matter?
If you're getting into the industry, though, if you're starting to become a business English teacher and you're willing to put their effort in, here's the thing: don't take clients that you know that you can't serve.
Hmm.
And if you want to take a client on that you think, well, I'm interested and I'm willing to put the effort in to understand this industry or to understand this type of position, then that's
Yeah,
fine. But you have to understand that it's going to take a little bit of effort on your end. You can't just grab a business book. It's not sufficient anymore, and
yeah,
everything's so globalized. It's just not going to work.
exactly. I loved that comment. That's a very on the spot comment.
Yeah, see, we got to the end. We
Yay!
figured it out.
Yay! Cheers.
All right, well, that's it for this episode. I'm going to have Helen back and we're going to talk about interview process. So we can have another little rant together.
Mhm.
But thank you so
Yeah,
much. And people can get in touch with you on social media. Is that the best way?
absolutely. Actually,
Hmm.
I'm giving a course on ELF.
Oh, when is it? When are you having? When's the next one?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I mean, because I've been organizing so many events for my own business.
Hmm.
We're having a crash course. The business, actually, one of my mentors is giving a crash course on intercultural competences, so overcoming cultural challenges at work. She's going to focus on tough situations. So
Excellent.
exactly, that's the point.
That's
She's going to
amazing.
focus on things like how to quit your job in English, because being hired, it's actually one thing, but quitting your job is another. How to complain about being um, overlooked for a promotion, for example. This sort of things that we do very well in Portuguese, but in English not so well. So she's got vast experience with that. So that's why she's giving this crash course. I'm going to give a course on LinkedIn. So lots of things.
Okay, so I'm just
But
gonna everybody
the
please go to
yeah,
LinkedIn for the
yeah.
crash. What you're doing a course on?
Mhm.
Not that one with the mentor is for your group, but you're giving a course on ELF
Yes, indeed. I'm doing that in April.
in
Yay, Elf in
April.
My Teaching. Yes, the second edition of Elf in My Teaching. So if you'd
Ah,
like to get more into Elf, understanding both the theory and how to make more Elf-oriented classes, because that's the thing. Priscilla's book is amazing, and people buy her book. Okay, but if you feel you're insecure about how to bring it into your class, the course is about that as well, and it's going to happen in April, the 15th and the 29th of April.
perfect. So
Yes. Mhm.
take a look. Stay on the lookout for that. I'm sure you'll post it all over social media and LinkedIn and all that good stuff. Feel free to follow Helen and Higher Up English because you do post a lot about ELF, BELF, these types of things.
Yeah,
Please get involved with conversations about BELF. They are very productive conversations once a month.
yeah.
Um, Amazing people that contribute to it, and you'll actually have a chance to interact with people from around the world. So, um,
It's worth it.
yes, definitely worth it. And I think that's it for today.
Yay.
For today, Helen.
Okay. Okay, deal.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. Want to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Kelly Pennington ELT and send me a message. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube or Spotify channel to stay up to date. And of course, take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.